So yeah, ideally each generation, has to make that choice, but often the senior generation, whether it's the founder or if it's the second generation, they have an idea about the third generation about how things should go. And so while I believe that each generation needs to sit down and say, do we want to do this together? Do we want to split up? Often there's pressure from the generation before about what they think should happen. And the rising generation or the younger generation wants to sort of please the older generation. And so right there is just one of the many things that kind of keeps family business consultants up at night, because if you have someone whose dream is to have their kids and grandkids working together, but the kids and grandkids don't necessarily have the interest or don't like working with each other, maybe they love the business, but they only like half of the family members that they have to own with. I mean, right there, that's not a simple thing.
Yeah. So I just want to say the field of behavioral economics, which is a mixture of psychology and economics, they come out with a few findings that people are notoriously terrible at predicting how they're going to feel about anything in the future, right? And also very hypocritical. You don't live up to you're not consistent with your own values. I think it's helpful every generation to say, what are our values and how are we going to live with them? If we believe in fairness, meritocracy, transparency, what are our policies going to be? Because down the road, you're inevitably going to get to 3 siblings love each other, and then their 7 children are in the business together, and one of them is an only child, so he owns a third. Then the other one had 4 children, so they each own a quarter of a third. If you have not figured out what are the criteria for you to make decisions about that stuff, you're in trouble.
Yeah, right. So sometimes simply having, at the sibling level, simply having fewer children or having one child while your brothers and sisters have a bunch of kids, depending on how the estate planning goes, whoever has the fewest children wins. They could get a third of the business while 7 other cousins are fighting over their chunk of it. And, and there's no simple answers to any of this. I recently was on a call with a potential new client, a husband and wife. They both came from family businesses where the families and the businesses fell apart. It was really, really tough stuff. And they called me because they were both entrepreneurial. They started and or bought 15 or 16 restaurants in the greater Philadelphia area. They had 3 kids in their 20s. Everything was fine as far as they could see, but they really wanted to avoid what happened in both of their families. They didn't want to see this happen again. They were natural entrepreneurs, and they really wanted me to answer the question. 2 of our kids are in the business. We have 1 kid who's a wealth manager actually in California, not in the business. Do we give her ownership? And they wanted me to answer the question. I said, there's no way I can answer it. I can help you answer it. I can look at the pros and cons of giving that child ownership, not giving them ownership. But there's a lot of tough decisions, and there's no easy answer. And they were hoping an attorney or some expert could tell them how to do it. The bottom line is you have to sit down and look at all the scenarios and look at the pros and cons, and then bring the family together to say, here's the choices, here's how it could play out. How do we feel about somebody owning and not working there? Do they get paid? Do they get dividends? Do we plug all the money back in the business? If we plug the money back in the business, the 2 siblings who work there are getting salaries and paid and maybe bonuses. And the other sibling has a piece of paper saying you own a third of something, but you're not getting paid, while your siblings are possibly getting wealthy working there. I mean, just to mention a few of them, there's no easy answer. You got to bring the family together and say, what is this about? What do we want out of it? What's our family's definition of fair?
And also for it to be the place, as Jim Collins said, it's a cliche now, in Good to Great, you need the passion, the talent, and the ability to make money. You should have to make a case as a family member why there's a place for you in the business. It should not be a safety net. And, if I'm a really talented next generation person and I see that my family's business has only let in the ne'er-do-wells, well, one thing is I know I could go in and probably just be the most competent person there, but do I want to run that ship of fools, or should it be an opportunity for the best and the brightest?
Right. Ira, you mentioned the word meritocracy. We could spend hours just on that, and you really hit on it there. And Mike, you asked where the title came from. For me, one of the, and I love what I do. I love working with families, and it's kind of tongue in cheek what keeps us up at night, but it's also not tongue in cheek. It's serious in that, we see families who are asking us for help, but often they want sort of help in a certain kind of way, and they don't want to look at some of the factors that are really causing their pain. And this meritocracy thing is huge. I've seen I've seen situations where someone in the, the child of the founder is making $300,000. Meanwhile, the founder is taking loans out on his house to pay taxes that the business isn't making. Why are you paying your son $300,000 and you're, putting your house on the line? It doesn't make any sense. You have to look at, do your kids deserve to be there, or your grandkids, or whoever's a family member? Do they deserve to be there? And how do you decide who deserves to be there and who doesn't? There's lots of situations where maybe someone in the family is kind of competent, but for the same money you're paying them, you could get somebody who has a lot more experience. I understand the desire to have your family member in the business, but you have to look at the business consequences for paying somebody a salary that could go to somebody who could do a much better job. And then you're also starting just a culture in the family of family first, business second. And when the business has rough times and you're not doing as well as you could be, or family members are relying on other family members who can't really do their job so well, the resentment grows. It's a recipe for guaranteeing conflict between family members and really ruining the business. So it's hard to say to some family members, we don't think there's a place here for you. And there's all kinds of ways that you can be fair to them in other ways if you want to be generous. But when generosity turns into every family member gets a place there, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, because I see so many situations where people are over their head, getting paid lots of money, and you could just see the tension between the family members.
Ira?
And I would just say, are you the most qualified person to be in any role in the company? When I ran the Family Business Center, the most years was at UMass, so I had to go through a hiring process through the state, an affirmative action organization, and they said, you'll get this job, but somebody would beat you out who's identical to you if they are a woman, a person of color, or a union member. And I thought, that's ridiculous. But I think in a family business, if you're the most qualified person in the world and then somebody else is just as qualified as you and they're a family member, that's affirmative action for family. That's how I think a family member should get hired. If they are the most qualified person in the world, or if there's a tie, they're a family member.